Well, welcome to week 15 and chapter 11, Critical Thinking and Critical Perspectives. First of all, I would like to thank Oliver Barra, Lance Rowe, and Chrissy Potter for their adult learning in the digital age. You all did a really good job with showing us digital uses, technology uses through your presentation. Very creative and very effective, I think, and lots of good things came from last week. All right, as we move to critical thinking and critical perspectives, critical thinking begins with critical theory, and critical theory really begins with Paulo Freire and pushing back on the idea of marginalized people. And so where does that come from? Sometimes we believe, and really maybe more times than we might think, we believe that what we think of as our way of being is the right way of being. And so we're swimming downstream and we don't think of it as any big problem. But we really critically need to think about who and what are marginalized in that kind of, it's really called hegemonic thinking. Hegemonic thinking is blindly thinking that your way is the right way. And if we were to look around and think about who is this marginalizing, who is disenfranchised, who is on the fringes here, and are those folks going the wrong way, really? Or are we lending a blind eye here somehow? Why do we have our thoughts the way we have our thoughts? And let me just give you a couple of ideas of when that's happened in history. So hegemonic thinking has occurred and now when we look back on these ideas, you'll think, well, of course. For example, women's suffrage. For a very, very long time in our country and really throughout the world and in some places actually today, women have been thought of as not equal to men and so ineligible to vote. And so that was considered just the way it was. Not something that we should give any thought to. It just is the way it was. And that's a fact. And so there was no question of it. And people just proceeded along those lines. Well, who's marginalized here? Over 50% of the population. And so at some point in our history, people said, well, wait a minute. Maybe this is wrong thinking. Let's critically think about this and let's empower. This is where Freire came into play. Let's empower those folks who are marginalized to have a voice, to present their perspective, and then let's look at whether that is in truth a fact that women are less than men and should be prevented from voting. Okay, so that was one thing. We said, well, we've gone way past that. We know that's not true. Okay, here's another thing. We have thought for many, 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 many years that Pluto was a planet, right? Many of us thought Pluto was a planet. And yet now, science has shown us that that was a theory, that Pluto was a planet. So Pluto is no longer categorized in that way, although we tend to still think of Pluto, many of us, as a planet, but it's really categorized in another way. And so we have changed, we've revised our thinking. No one there was particularly marginalized, so per se. But that was, again, we used critical thinking to revisit our assumptions and come to different conclusions. So do we have any of that kind of hegemony going on today? Well, let's think about the things that are current locally and nationally. And we won't even get into worldwide because I know you can all move into that sphere. But let's just think about, all right, we have issues that are national issues in debate among our contenders for President of the United States, and many of the people who are contenders for other public offices talking about things like immigration. And we are expressing our views on that subject and all around that subject, and consider who and what is disenfranchised, who maybe should be empowered in that thinking. And that's where we need to really use critical thinking and critical theory. Rather than just think, oh, well, this is what the majority thinks, and so I'm leaping on that bandwagon. Maybe we should give a lot more thought, not just a little, but a lot more thought to a very bigger picture, and looking at many of the aspects that include who the people are that are involved, what their issues are, what the broader issues are with regard to in this case, in immigration, to agriculture, to service industry, to the kinds of things that, what are the benefits of immigration? What are the detriments of immigration? Who, if we were to go to build the wall, then, and take the long view of that, and what does that do to our country? If we don't do that, take the long view, and what does that do? Seriously, these are situations that we're right in the midst of hegemony, believing that we are right without giving serious critical thought to it. So that's one area, and there are many others. For example, let me just bring you to Idaho State and looking at the issue of the hate crimes, really, that are being perpetrated on Kuwaiti and Saudi students, with property damage to cars and other kinds of property in their residences, as well as being spit at, innuendos, and other kinds of things. Is that the way truly that we in Idaho think is the right way of being? This is what a few are doing, I would suggest. And yet, who holds these perspectives? They must think it's right thinking to want to send that kind of a message to a group of our international students. So what's that about? When we give critical thought to it, when we're talking about critical theory and empowerment, maybe we want to think very broadly about diversity, about what other perspectives give us, and the kind of enrichment that's available. So these are just a few things that we are talking about when we're talking about critical thinking and critical perspectives. It's about exploring our assumptions. It's about empowering those that are disenfranchised. It's about questioning the power differential in our thinking. When we look at the activity for this week, and view the Purdue website with the Introductory Guide to Critical Theory, I think you will find that your views might be challenged. Be open to that. Really suspend your views for just a little while and see how others think about different topics. Maybe it will open a doorway for you to reconsider your stance. Not to suggest that your thinking is erroneous, but oftentimes our thinking can be narrow. And we always, I think, and I rarely use the word always, I think in this case it's important that we always be open to new ideas. And so that's critical theory. So as we look at our presentation that was provided to us by Nicole Baird and Jennifer Hamblin and Kelly Steele this week, consider their ideas. I think it's going to be an interesting week for us, a fun week, and I'm looking forward to it. All right, with that, I want to say one more thing. I want to say that how much I enjoyed your individual projects. Really, really some good individual projects. So thank you for the good work that you put into it. I know that there are still a few out there that haven't been submitted. Please do submit them. This is an important piece of the principles of adult education. This is your piece, learning yourself. So I am looking forward to your ideas, your thoughts, and how you are thinking of teaching yourself. All right, it is week 15, second to the last week in the semester. It's an exciting time. Looking forward to it. Let's enjoy chapter 11 and critical thinking.